and gentlemen, I want to talk to you right fast. Let's have a laid back conversation. Those of you who have anxiety, let's just cool your jets on this for a minute. Eternity? No, 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 no. Let's have a laid back conversation. There he is. About living forever. Who doesn't want to do it? Right? Nobody wants to die. Nobody, dude. Dying sucks, man. Am I right? No, the man doesn't. None of us do. You know what? Evidently, it's something we all got to go through. I guess, I suppose, or do we? Perhaps we're on the verge, the precipice of being able to cheat death itself. But demand, you would ask me, how? How, Doc? Could we do that? Well, let's talk about it, shall we? Have a little convo about it, shall we? Death, for now, is inevitable. Blah. But if you want to talk about it, we're already starting to reach to the edges, I believe, of our mortality. There are actually, and Suji will like this, 20 times more centenarians, those who are over the age of 100, today than just 50 years ago. 20 times more. Not only that, Japan actually has the highest percentage in the world with 6 centarians for every 10,000 people. And by 2050, it is predicted by scientists to increase eightfold. Access to clean water, higher nutrient dense foods, higher quality medical care, etc., are all contributing factors. But how close to how close are we to actual biological immortality? Well, Jeff Bezos, founder and former CEO of Amazon and Superman villain, recently donated a mere $3 million to Altos Labs, a biotech health startup focused on cellular rejuvenation, a program aiming to restore cell health and resilience with the goal of reversing disease and transforming medicine as we know it. Google founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin started a company known as Calico, a company focused on the genetic basis of aging. They're tracking mice from birth to death and attempting to identify genetic markers for diseases and prevent them from ever occurring. Side note, Calico is also part of Alphabet, the company that owns Google and also YouTube. Mm, mm. I think the most fascinating part about this is the fact that death is actually no longer a mystery. We actually already know the causes of aging. And if we can push back aging, we can push back disease. If we can push back disease, then we're that much closer to pushing back death itself. So we already know where all these doors to biological immortality are. All we lack now are the keys. So what are these doors? And where are these keys? Kiwi says probably, let's see. What did y'all say? Oh, did you know about the new cryo chambers? I did not, Kiwi. Please regale me. Eternity wants to live forever, but only after we remove taxes. We're definitely going to end up in some like potential hellscape where only the rich are allowed to live forever. That's, which actually creates a problem we're going to talk about later. Because, I mean, you know. So, for those of you who are unfamiliar, what there are a few key concepts in achieving genetic mortality. First of all, we have to stop aging. Well, ask yourself and me, Doc, what causes aging? Well, I'll tell you. Um, Evidently, they've traced it down, scientists, to these little genetic components known as telomeres. Is that correct, Eternity? These are evidently the protective caps at the ends of chromosomes that shorten each time a cell divides. Once the telomeres become too short, cells can no longer divide and become, what's the word? Senescent, or they age and die, or die. Telomerase, this enzyme, is an enzyme, that can extend the length of telomeres, potentially allowing cells to divide. Definitely. Research is ongoing to understand how telomerase activation could prevent aging without increasing cancer, because evidently the telomerase is also an enzyme that controls that is responsible for uncontrolled cell division that leads to cancer cells, right? As Eternity actually explained in another one of our podcasts at Campfire Stories. So that's sort of where the hitch, right? Is that how do we increase the good cells without actually causing cancer and allowing the bad cells to continue to reach? Eternity adds telomerase and telomeres are essential in cell division. Basically, they keep shortening the chance they mess up forever. Increases. It's the natural causes death. I read that wrong, but I think you understand what he was trying to say. So also they're looking at what they call senescent cells. Cellular senescence, as cells age, they can enter a state where they no longer divide, but don't die off, releasing inflammatory factors that contribute to aging and age-related diseases. Senolytics are drugs or therapies aimed at removing senescent cells, thereby reducing their negative impact on the body and possibly extending health span. And of course, genetic and epigenetic interventions are being considered. Techniques like CRISPR-Cas9 allow for precise editing of genes, which could be used to repair or replace genes that contribute to aging or age-related diseases. Epigenetic reprogramming involves altering the epigenetic marks on DNA, which can potentially reset cells to a younger state or influence gene expression to promote longevity. I mean, Eternity, your experience, possible? How close are we? And why are we not putting all of our money into this? Good question. Is it political? Is it money? A lot of scientists believe it's a matter of time before we unlock these codes, and we're able to significantly extend our lifespan. I mean, question really is probably not a matter of how or why, but just when we're able to do this. And then I suppose the ethical question won't be considered, as in most situations it'll be tossed to the side. And people will absolutely ignore the facts and be like, live forever, rubber stamp it. Eternity says, not my area of expertise, but I would agree it's only a matter of time till we figure it out. My question to you would be this: should we? Exactly. You already read my mind, and that's kind of what we were talking about, right? Nothing in anything that I've looked at has those questions really asked, right? Obviously, we talked earlier about the cloning, that as of now, no actual humans have ever been cloned. Although some fringe groups do claim they've evidently never produced any evidence. My knowledge, if you can find it, please let me know. But that's one of the big problems. Like, people ask, about the ethical questions, right? So despite, rampant science, there are ethical questions that need to be considered a lot. Like, why we should do something, right? And what would be the ramifications if we could? So I think that's a gigantic question to be asked. Um, Metabolic and hormonal pathways have also been studied. Caloric restriction and mimetic drugs. Caloric restriction has been shown to extend lifespan in various organisms. Drugs that mimic the effects of caloric restriction, such as rapamycin, I believe, are being studied for the potential to extend human lifespan. And also hormonal intervention. Hormones like growth hormone and insulin, like growth factor 1, IGF-1, are involved in growth and the aging process. Modulating these hormones could potentially slow aging. And of course, let's never forget regenerative medicine. Stem cells. Research into stem cells aims to regenerate or replace damaged tissue and or organs, potentially restoring youthful function and prolonged life. But there's a hitch. Even if you're able to do, and it's something that looks like going to happen sooner rather than later, the forbidden fruit evidently might be tasted after all. Being denied by God, if you are a Bible reader, right? Adam and Eve attempted to taste of this fruit and were summarily thrown out of the Garden of Eden. Something to think about, something to consider. Were we ever meant to taste such fruits? But even if we were able to, there's still a problem. You see, even if you had biological aging defeated, right? Even if you had disease defeated. I mean, what's to stop you from getting crushed by a car or a compress or tossed into the vacuum of space, right? There's nothing that could stop you from dying, an accident, assassination attempt, or from some random freakish thing that's just sort of unforeseen, right? So we're still sort of eluded. Real actual mortality would still elude us, even if our bodies were mostly perfected. The true immortality lies in consciousness, right? Allowing your consciousness to live for a wrinkly face is demand. I mean, if you could stop the if you could stop the aging process, you wouldn't get wrinkles. I mean, maybe you would from wear and tear. I don't know. I guess if your cells were forever able to regenerate, then that wouldn't be an issue, would it? I think that's sort of what the question is. If we were allowed to regenerate our cells, you wouldn't get wrinkly. Forever stay youthful, young, and healthy. You'd even reverse probably the aging, right? Exactly. So, okay, that's a good point. But what about irreparable damage, right? Like, how far we're going to would we be able to regenerate, right? True. If you had a scar on your face, right? You could heal a scar, the initial damage, right? But could you even heal, scars sometimes don't ever heal, right? Maybe you could. Maybe we're talking about assuming that you could regenerate all damage to the body, grow new organs or whatever it is. That still couldn't stop you from dying, right? A bullet to the head is game over. You don't regenerate from that. We're not talking about healing factors like Deadpool. You know what I'm saying? Tossed out an airlock into space. What's going on, Josh? Tossed out from an airlock into outer space, you're donezo. Doesn't matter how good you can regenerate. Like that, all that still takes time, right? If you get squashed or a car runs you over, you're dead, right? You're not going to be able to be resurrected. So that's my point, right? Is that all the powers of Deadpool. That's what the secondary way to avoid the throes of death might come from. A concept known as mind uploading, or perhaps the progenitor to such a thing, um, Neuralink. Now, Neuralink doesn't claim to do anything like mapping the brain. That's a whole nother issue altogether, especially because, you know, currently the best we can do to map the brain would be an MRI, but scaling that up would fry your brain like an egg. So currently we can't even begin to do something of that nature. But if human beings ever plan to achieve true immortality, it would have to be a transfer of consciousness. There's really no other way. If your body was destroyed, you would need to attempt to implant it into a new body or upload your consciousness to some sort of machine, AI perhaps, right? Kiwi says, would regenerating cells have a chance of growing out of control, basically like acting like cancer? Yes, Kiwi. That's actually so. Yeah, back to the original question about defeating aging. That's one of the risks. Is that if we stop limiting the the parts of or excuse me, if we start limiting the regeneration of cells, what's to say that certain cells don't get out of control, right? That certain cancer cells, right, get out of control. So that's one reason, as Eternity said, the telomeres are responsible for not allowing, you know what I'm saying, these these dead cells or these mutated cells, right, to to double and multiply. Ironically enough, cancer cells bypass the telomere problem. They're immortal cell lines. Oh, yeah, I didn't know that. So the cancer cells are superseding that system. But that's one of the problems, right? Is that if you want to double cell growth, you're going to have control over which ones do. And I mean, currently we don't, as far as I know how to stop cancer cells from multiplying. And I mean, unless somebody knows something that I don't know, or they're hiding it from us, it's an issue that you really have to wonder about. Have we learned nothing from Black Mirror, Sasuji? No, we learned nothing from TV. We only let it entertain us, and then we do whatever the hell we want to do. So cancer cells grow unchecked, and they don't follow our body's rules, right? So it's like, how do we do that with our genetics and with our good cells and the ones we want to generate our bodies, right? And then, of course, at the same time, find a way to limit the bad cells from growing unchecked. So that's the question. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I just looked all this stuff up, man. We're having a conversation. You know what I'm saying? You know what? I'm gonna take another sip of beer. Hold on. Mm. But even if we conquer this question, like I said before, it's it's really an issue of transferring your conscious because accidents could happen. You could wall yourself off. Have any of y'all ever seen this is one of Suji and I's favorite. It's hold on, I'm drawing a blank. What's that called? That the science fiction show on Netflix? Not Black Mirror. You got me thinking it's Black Mirror. What's it called? Yeah, what is that in the background? What the hell was that? Hold on, I'm about to find it for you. What was that show called, man? It was a Netflix show, dude. Fuji, please, for the love of God. It's not robots, no. No, I had two seasons and then it got canceled. It was based on is it science fiction? Hold on. Not the Dark Tower. Yes, that's it. It's called Altered Carbon. They actually deal with this problem in the show. If you ever seen it, let me tell you, season one's a banger. It's an adult show, so I mean, it's got themes. So prepare yourself. For those of you who haven't seen it, thank you, Suji. I was struggling. Don't forget to cut that out when we're editing. That huge pause where I was literally fumbling. Um, anyways, yes, Altered Carbon deal. That show deals with the concept of transferring your consciousness into another body, right? And that's kind of where I'm going with this. It's the only real true immortality, right? Because if your body gets damaged beyond repair or shot or you get ran over by a car, then you're just done so, right? You could have all the regenerating, abilities you want. You're just dead. Your body is still a fragile piece of meat and bone and sinew, right? It's literally a fragile meat mech for all intents and purposes. So the only true way is to transfer your consciousness into another body, or perhaps mind uploading, as it's known. And mind uploading is a concept of uploading one's consciousness to a computer or sort of device. Dubious science at best currently. Um, but even if we're somehow able to defeat the process of aging and stave off disease, accidental death, murder, the fragility of our bodies, again, will always be a barrier to true immortality. Uploading our consciousness into a non biological form is the only way to achieve some assurance of immortality, and Elon Musk has taken the first step to making that reality a possibility. Now, Neuralink doesn't do anything um, of that sort yet, but I mean, melding our consciousness with artificial intelligence is definitely sort of that first step in that direction. Um, to have complete mapping of our consciousness, it is believed we would need a detailed brain mapping, neuronal structure, a comprehensive map of the brain's neuronal structure, including the precise connections, synapses between neurons, would be necessary. This mapping must be detailed enough to capture the full complexity of the brain's neural networks. You'd also have to have functional mapping of the brain as well, understanding not only the physical connections but also the functional aspects of neural activity, e.g., neurotransmitter releases, electrical signals, excuse me, is would be crucial. This involves mapping the dynamics of how information is processed in the brain. The man says if I upload my brain to a device, pretty sure it's called malware. You'd also need data inquisition, non destructive scanning process. Developing non destructive methods to scan the brain will require a resolution that is a major challenge. Current technologies, as I mentioned, like MRI and fMRI, provide relatively low resolution images compared to the fine detail that we will be needing. So, anyone who had an MRI knows how much it absolutely sucks. Sounds like somebody's jackhammering right next to your head, and all that for a very low resolution of the neural structure of your brain and or body. And of course, we're going to probably need more invasive techniques. Um, might need more invasive techniques to provide higher resolution of the brain, but could damage the brain in the process, making them impractical for uploading a living person's consciousness. It's the worst, says Kiwi. Yes, we all know it is absolutely terrible. And last but not least, let's not forget, where are we going to store all this information? There's a lot of life in Suji, Kiwi, Demand Eternity, Metal Gear Greed, all y'all, Glitch, everybody, everybody by the sound of my voice. There's a lot in your brain, a lot to you as a person. And if we are to assume, and I believe we are greatly assuming here, that all you are is the processes of your brain, if true, then it should be absolutely, um, we should absolutely be able to transfer that consciousness to something else. But how much space would it take? Well, the human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons and trillions of synapses, according to of storing and processing. This amount of data would require an extremely advanced computational and storage capacities. I'm sure the likes of some quantum computing that hasn't even quite been invented yet. So don't forget you would also, once your body was expired and your processes were transferred to the machine or a machine, the computational system must be able to simulate your brain's processes, including signal transmission, learning, memory, and other cognitive functions in real time or faster than that. So, what would that feel like? Because your body could simulate those functions eventually, but if you didn't get it just right, it wouldn't feel right. It would be off. It sounds just awful. Imagine if you were trapped. Again, Black Mirror. Where this is going, isn't it? This is just an episode of Black Mirror that we're helping spawn into reality. I mean, just like with genetic manipulation, I feel like this again, if indeed we believe that all we are synaptic processes and storage in our neural networks in our brains, those could be simulated, those could be copied, and they could be stored theoretically. And this would allow some sort of immortality, so to speak. I'm not sure it would be one. We're ignoring, like Eternity said, the ethical question of if this is something we should do. So we're gonna ignore that question. But as far as software development, sophisticated software capable of accurately emulating the brain's functioning would also be required. This software must not only replicate the structural and functional aspects of our brains, but also adapt to changes in learning over time. AI and machine learning integrated integrating advanced AI and machine learning techniques could help in modeling the brain's complex processes and decision making. And this is what I argue Elon Musk is doing. Like he's connected like all of these electrodes and processes to basically a USB card or a switch in the brain, right? I'm sure that's incorrect, but you understand what I'm saying, right? That that the person that has this, and there is one, by the way, they've already done it. There is someone with Neuralink. As far as what he can do, it's increasing, I believe, by the month. But currently, he's able to move a mouse that's integrated with his brain, connected. And I mean, to say that it would be foolish to think he's not also mapping out the brain's functionality and process. This is as much an experiment as it is designed to help, I believe, the quadriplegic gentleman that has received this particular. Maybe we'll look at that later on. But the gentleman that's actually received this surgery. So Neuralink is live and operating as we speak. So of course, to make the uploaded consciousness functional, there must be also be mechanisms that provide sensory input and output responses, enabling interaction with the environment and or the virtual worlds you would be inhabiting, which brings up another really good question. How do we know we're not already in it already? The sense of self and physical embodiment may also need to be addressed to maintain the continuity of consciousness, right? Like if indeed our consciousness was implanted into a virtual reality, well, if it was real enough and all of the inputs and responses were correct or seemed correct, then this could very well be a virtual world we inhabit right now. Be no different if we got it, if whoever invented it got it correctly, you would never know the difference. That always makes me wonder too when if you've ever disassociated. I wonder if that's like sort of your body disconnecting from the simulation, right? Maybe lag. Maybe that's why sometimes you doesn't feel life doesn't feel real. Maybe it's not. Just the thought. Advances get me out. Okay. But perhaps, this is all for nothing. Because there is a very slight, distinct possibility that you and I and everyone, by the sound of my voice, is already immortal. Has anyone ever heard of the theory of quantum immortality? A speculative concept, to be sure, but it's derived from the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. It is primarily, for now, a thought experiment that deals with the implications of the many worlds interpretations on life and death, particularly involving situations where several odds are minimal. And so we can look very briefly at the concept. That's all I'm about qualified to do is read off a page. Welcome to Campfire Stories. The basics. According to the many worlds interpretation, every quantum event with multiple possibilities and outcomes leads to a branch of the universe into different worlds, each representing a different outcome. This means that for every possible decision or random event, the universe splits and all possible outcomes are realized in separate parallel universes. So, not only are all possible outcomes possible in this interpretation, all possible outcomes are realities. They actually exist. Now, where does that come into quantum immortality? Hashtag Jesus life, hashtag heaven bound. Well, quantum immortality is often illustrated through a thought experiment similar to Schrodinger's cat, but with a human subject facing a deadly scenario, e.g., a gun that has a 50% chance of firing, right? The idea is that from the subjective perspective of the person in the scenario, they will always find themselves in the branch of the universe where they survived. No matter how likely or unlikely survival might be in each individual universe. In the universes where the person doesn't survive, they are not conscious to experience those outcomes. So, you ever had a situation where near death experience, you nearly this close to expiring, but you made it out, escaped somehow? Well, you didn't. You're only experiencing the universe you did. And so that every outcome in which you may have expired is a reality that you don't experience. So you are constantly shifting through universes, your consciousness rather, as you experience them, but you only experience the ones where have a livable outcome. All others are branches closed off to your your individual consciousness. The implication, of course, leads to the notion of quantum immortality, where the person will never experience their own death because their consciousness continues in the branch of the universe where they survive, regardless of those odds. So maybe all this is for nothing. Maybe there is no death because we will always arrive at the scenario where we survive. Doc Demand Show says, "Oh no, what if Apple made Forever Live and you miss the subscription? Do they send the repo man or just eject your CD? You think there will be tiered subs so you can live forever for 10.99? Listen, if there's an ability to monetize immortality, you know that it's happening. You know that it's happening. It will happen. It is simply a matter of time. Kiwi says, hear me out. We're all shifting through universes which are slightly different, and that's why Curious George has no tail now. We made the argument. We actually made that argument. That's all I wanted to say is that honestly, it would explain a lot of strangeness and weirdness that we experience, right? I mean, either that or it's Demand's theory that we're paying Apple to keep us all alive. That's also a possibility. But, if indeed we're experiencing multiple universes, that would account for a lot of things. And if universes are perpetually colliding in ways that we don't understand or can't necessarily theorize or experience, right? It would explain, I think, a lot of things. It could explain ghosts. Perhaps they're just simply echoes that are momentarily experiencing our universe, but haven't interacted in a way that they can physically come to this plane, right? I've always thought about that. That's a possibility for those that, you know, um, perhaps aren't from this plane, right? Perhaps it's not a spiritual realm, but a universal one that we're experiencing. Again, thoughts, feelings, and things of that nature being able to transfer over, right? The idea that the universe that we experience here isn't the only one. If there are bubble universes or membrane universes that are parallel to ours, isn't it possible that they could somehow interact with ours? I don't know. I actually don't know. And maybe death, is just a shifting of those universes. I always thought that that could be a strong possibility that your consciousness, is immortal. And death here or a separation from your body is simply just a shift in your realities, which are many and unseen all around. Hard to say. We each have to decide for ourselves as there's no conclusive proof of any of it. But it's a possibility. It's a possibility. As much as it is a Black Mirror episode. So do with that what you will. Or as the man says, perhaps we've all just had a nice dose of LSD to keep us placated. It's in the water, so to speak, which is why I drink beer. Cheers.